Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Electra Bluebird. This watch is available from electrawatches.com for €299. The watch is inspired by the Bluebird K7 hydroplane. Electra have a rich brand heritage. They were founded in 1966 in France, and then in 1971 the brand died out during the quartz crisis. In 2024 the brand came back to life, and their watches are now made by Pequinet in Morteau in France. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is housed inside this outer cardboard box. On the lid we can see there is a picture of the Bluebird K7 hydroplane which the watch is inspired by. And in the top right corner we have the Electra emblem and also Electra logo in gilt. So one removes the lid to the base, which is a snug fit, and inside we have the watch box which is plastic and black vinyl or PU leather coated. Inside the base there's a foam cutout panel which is a snug fit around the watch box, and that prevents it from moving around in shipping. Very aesthetically pleasing, matte grain finish to the black vinyl or PU leather, flawless stitching around the perimeter, and I really like the quality of the finishing. It does visually look like genuine leather, although it is made from vinyl PU leather. We have a strap with the Electra emblem in gilt, stainless steel popper securing it, and both halves open freely. The interior is fully upholstered with light blue contrasting velour fabric to a good standard, and in the centre section we have a padded pillow cushion which the watch sits upon, which is also upholstered to a good standard with light blue velour fabric. So good quality watch box, and they deserve credit because they could have taken the less expensive default option of a cardboard watch box, bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at €299. Now, there are two items which are absent. This is a review sample, so they haven't included the warranty card, which is plastic. However, if you want to see the warranty card, I previously reviewed the Electra Daredevil Skin Diver, and that did come with a plastic warranty card, and it detailed the terms and conditions of the 3-year international warranty. This is a review sample, so they haven't included it with this piece, the Electra Bluebird, but I can confirm if you purchase the piece from electrawatches.com, the warranty card will be included. However, there is something else which is absent, and it was also absent with the Daredevil Skin Diver I previously reviewed. No owner's instruction manual, and I was critical of that, and I'm going to be critical of it again because regardless of price point, it is mandatory for a watch, even in the low tier between €0 and €500, to have some kind of owner's instruction manual, either a printed booklet or alternatively a plastic card with a QR code which can be scanned with an Android or iPhone to download the owner's instruction manual, detailing the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber VK63 Mecha Quartz. So I'd like to see Electra introduce a owner's instruction manual, either as a printed booklet or alternatively a warranty card, but something nonetheless. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 13.5mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The F-Chem floor rubber strap is matte black, and it's tapered. It tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the buckle and tang. Solid 316L grade stainless steel buckle and tang. Flawless brush satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks. Nice heavy gauge to it, and it's engraved with high definition engraving with the Electra emblem. Nice curvature to it. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks. It's been deburred and chamfered very well. Beautiful lustre to the brush satin finishing, and I like the curvature of it. No sharp edge to the top edge, and the corners have been deburred and chamfered very well. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices, silver mirror polished applied Electra emblem at 12 o'clock, and the silver mirror polished handset. Handset is correctly proportioned, and they've used the original style of handset used on Electra pieces from the 1960s and 1970s. So to remind you, Electra produced watches from 1966 to 1971, including chronograph pieces with rotating dive watch bezels. Now, this is not a heritage reissue of a 1960s or a 1970s Electra chronograph with a dive bezel. However, it is clearly inspired by it because we have a similar tonneau case, and of course the dial execution and also the bezel design is visually similar, so they've taken inspiration from their chronographs from the 1960s and 1970s, although it is not a direct heritage reissue. So 3 subdials. Now, I'm going to be critical of the subdials. The reason why I'm critical is the colour tone. The 9 and 3 o'clock subdials are very aesthetically pleasing in blue, which complements the sunburst dial, which is a gradient sunburst dial. It graduates from a violet blue in the centre to an electric blue at the chapter ring. So they've done a good job of the dial execution itself. Also, there are nice mirror polish rings around the 3 subdials at 9, 6 and 3. However, visually I think this would look more aesthetically pleasing if the 3 subdials were the same blue rather than having a white subdial at the 6 o'clock position, because it clashes with the other subdials and it doesn't really complement the blue sunburst dial or the other blue subdials at 9 and 3 respectively. But this is subjective. Some collectors prefer a different coloured subdial. I think when you have 3 subdials they should all match in colour. The tachymeter scale is clearly indexed with Arabic numerals, and also the tachymeter printing. The font is very crisp, it's high definition, it's sharp, it's not too thick and blurry. They've done a very good job of it, so it's a beveled tachymeter internally. I think this would be more functional as a chronograph rather than having a rotating dive style bezel if they'd used a tachymeter bezel in ceramic, and I think externally it would have made it easier to read rather than having it in the chapter ring position, because the problem is when you have the tachymeter internally around the circumference of the dial, the chapter ring then has to fit in between the indices, and of course the diameter of the dial has to be made smaller, and of course the diameter of the chapter ring has to be made smaller to fit it all in, because you have a tachymeter which is beveled, replacing where the chapter ring with minute ticks would normally go. So I think they've made an error here. Would have looked better deleting the internal tachymeter and simply having a beveled chapter ring with white minute ticks as per a dive piece, for example. And then externally, rather than having this rotating dive bezel, they could have used the tachymeter with a fixed ceramic bezel insert. That would have looked better. However, purist Electra collectors will appreciate this, and I'll explain why. Because in the 1960s, from 1966 to 1971, when the brand died out, Electra did make chronographs like this with 3 subdials, and they also did have rotating bidirectional dive bezels. The difference is the bezels they used back then, the aluminium bezel inserts, visually looked different because they had silver hour markers and also Arabic numerals. Now this bezel has hour markers, but it's made from ceramic with a matte finish, and it is fully lumed with BGW9, which we'll test in the lume test. So one could argue subjectively, well, they've upgraded it to modern day specification because, of course, ceramic is harder and more scratch resistant than aluminium, therefore that's beneficial. They've also inlaid it with BGW9, again that's beneficial because you can read it in the dark. The negative is they have not done a heritage reissue of the original bezel used, which had Arabic numerals, for example 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. Then it could be used like a dive bezel. Problem with this bidirectional bezel is it doesn't really serve any meaningful purpose other than being aesthetically pleasing, because we don't have any Arabic numerals as per a dive bezel. For example, the first 15 minutes are not indexed with minute ticks. It doesn't have 15, 30, 45 as per a dive bezel. Alternatively, it doesn't have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 as per a dive bezel. These hour markers really don't serve any meaningful purpose. It's just there for aesthetic reasons. So I'm critical of it, although subjectively I do appreciate ceramic being harder and more scratch resistant than aluminium, as I've detailed. So dial execution is good in terms of legibility. The sunburst dial is very well done. They deserve credit because it does graduate from a violet blue to an electric blue at the chapter ring. So when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, the AL coating works well, but the sunburst gradient dial is very aesthetically pleasing. The applied indices are correctly proportioned and the quality of the mirror polishing to the indices is good. Legibility of the tachymeter is good, albeit it would be larger and more legible had they used it externally, as I've detailed on the bezel, but this is subjective. Some purist Electra collectors will prefer the design of having the dive bezel as per the original from the 1960s and 1970s and an internal tachymeter scale. Really comes down to your personal preference. Subdials at 9, 6 and 3 are clearly legible. Again, Arabic numerals are correctly proportioned. One can clearly read the scales on the 9, 6 and 3 subdials for the chronograph complication. So, let's test the bezel execution. Now, bidirectional bezel. This may come as a surprise to you because, of course, it's a dive style bezel with a lume pip. One would expect it to be a 120 click unidirectional bezel. Again, this is subjective, but I'm going to be critical of it because when a brand does heritage reissues of 1960s or 1970s pieces, they have to strike a balance between vintage aesthetic and modern day specification. Now, this isn't strictly speaking a heritage reissue of a 1960s or 1970s Electra chronograph, but it's clearly visually inspired by it. I think they should have upgraded it to 120 click unidirectional bezel as per a dive piece. That would have made it more useful. However, purist Electra collectors will appreciate this is true to the originals from the 1960s and 1970s because they also had friction bezels. They predated the use of 120 and 60 click unidirectional bezels, and they had a wire which engages in a groove in the head of the piece, and then the groove they have a second groove inside the bezel, and the octagonal wire engages in the groove in the case and the groove in the bezel to provide friction bidirectionally, so it doesn't click as per a GMT bezel and a dive bezel, but I think they should have made a 120 click unidirectional bezel with a click spring. But in terms of resistance, feels smooth. Now it's a light resistance. It feels similar to a Vostok Amphibia, which you may be familiar with. That also has a bidirectional friction bezel rather than clicking. I would prefer a stiffer resistance to it. It's okay, so it's not going to accidentally slip out of position. If you knock against it or you rub against the coin edge teeth, it's not going to accidentally move out of position, so that's good. There is enough friction to it. It does feel smooth, doesn't feel rough or gritty, but it just feels slightly too light. I think they could have made it tighter. In terms of resistance, feels even all the way through the 360 degrees rotation. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever, so that's good. And because it's bidirectional rather than unidirectional, one doesn't need to check for back play because you can manually align it, the Lume pip and triangle, perfectly on the 60 on the tachymeter and the 12 clock index. But it feels good. Feels nice and tight in terms of lateral side-to-side play, medium resistance, but slightly too light for my personal taste. I prefer a stiffer bezel, but that's my personal taste. So, in terms of resistance, it feels lighter than a Seiko 5KX. Feels similar to a Pagani design PD1661 in terms of resistance. Feels similar to a Steel Dive SD 1953 in terms of resistance. And I would say it's lighter than a San Martin SN017G, which you may be familiar with. So that will put it into perspective. So, the bezel itself is solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finished, high definition coin edge teeth, which is good, nice large chamfer which deletes the tips of the coin edge teeth, so it's good. It's grippy and tactile but doesn't feel sharp, doesn't dig into the index finger and thumb, which is good, pleasant to use but very grippy. The bezel insert is made from ceramic. Now, credit where credit's due. They've made the correct decision here by using a matte finish versus glossy finish. Glossy ceramic bezels look like black enamel, and they're very shiny and reflective, but this looks more like aluminium as per the original 1960s and 1970s aluminium bezel inserts used on their chronographs. The hour markers are clearly infilled with BGW9 and the colour tone is white, and it matches the colour tone of the white BGW9 used on the handset and also the indices. They don't look more cream or white on the bezel, the dial or the hand, so that's good. The colour tone is good. But I think this would have looked more aesthetically pleasing if it were an aluminium bezel insert and silver hour markers and ideally Arabic numerals, for example 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, or alternatively 15, 30, 45 with 15-minute ticks as per the original. But this is just my personal preference. But the matte finish is better than glossy. Does look like aluminium, and of course ceramic is harder and more scratch resistant. They have done a good job of engraving the hour marks and also in filling the engraving with BGW9 to a good standard. Case is a tonneau case, concentric CNC lathe tool machines to the top profile, which has a brushed satin finish, very aesthetically pleasing. Nice large bevels, which mark the transition between the top of the tonneau case and the flanks. Large mirror polish bevels run the full length of the case, and they've done a very good job. High quality mirror polishing to the bevels. Flanks of the case are longitudinally brushed satin finish with a fine grained satin finish, so beautiful luster. Nice large undercuts to the flanks, nice curvature to the tonneau case, and the large mirror polish bevels to the undercuts to the flanks delete the sharp edges. This enhances comfort level and feel good factor. Tips of the lugs have angular bevels that deletes the sharp corners, so this feels like a very comfortable piece to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. I like the proportions of the tonneau case and the rectangular cutouts for the lugs. It does visually look like a 1960s or 1970s piece, so it's clearly inspired by the original chronographs, albeit not a direct heritage reissue. The strap is matte black and it's made from FKM floor rubber. So, to remind you, I've referred to this in my previous reviews, but I'll remind you, FKM floor rubber really is a compromise. It sits between the two. So, in terms of the strap spectrum, at the top end of the spectrum, we've got natural rubber and NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, which are harder and more robust. NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, is often used in the aeronautical and automotive industries because of its properties. It is chemical, ultraviolet light and acid resistant, and therefore it is incredibly robust and suitable for O-rings and rubber gasket seals used in the automotive and aeronautical industries. It's also used for watch straps. Due to the aforementioned properties, it's a very robust strap material. So, like natural rubber, it is stiffer but incredibly durable, and in terms of longevity, it is one of the most durable strap materials. FKM floor rubber is softer, it's more supple than natural rubber and also NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, although it is stiffer and more durable and robust than silicone rubber at the other end of the spectrum. The benefit or the positive of silicone rubber is it's very soft and supple, therefore the strap doesn't need any breaking in. Silicone rubber straps feel very soft and supple. The negative is they're not durable, so they have a tendency to split and crack around the spring bar end and also the buckle and tang end with daily wear and tear because silicone rubber is softer. So positive is it's soft, negative is it's not durable and robust. FKM floor rubber really is the best of both because it's not as hard as natural rubber or NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, although it is harder and more robust than silicone rubber at the other end of the spectrum. So really it sits between the two, between nitrile butadiene rubber and silicone rubber respectively. FKM floor rubber does have a nice matte finish to it and it is nice and smooth, and I like the fact that it does feel soft and supple enough to be comfortable, but of course it's more robust and durable with daily wear and tear than a silicone rubber strap. Correct choice at this price point. So, smooth on the top side, smooth on the flanks. It's tapered in thickness, so it's thicker at the spring bar end where it needs to be more reinforced for durability. And then it tapers down in thickness to the buckle and tang end to make it more soft and supple. It's more flexible, which is good. Two keepers. First keeper is fixed, second keeper slides. And to clarify, when I say fixed, you can actually move the first keeper because it is engaged. Now just bear with me and I'll disengage it to show you clearly. We have two teeth. A pair of teeth on the right hand flank and a pair of teeth on the left hand flank, and this is a very good design. I've seen this on other watch straps. Works very well because you can easily engage the first keeper between the two pairs of teeth on the left and the right hand flank, and this means you can move it out of position if you need to. For example, if you need to fit it around a wetsuit or if you have a larger wrist, but if you want to keep it in position rather than floating up and down the strap as per the second keeper, it does engage very positively in between the pairs of teeth on the left and the right hand flank. So it does work very well. It's a good system. Second keeper is correctly proportioned and that floats up and down the strap. So this strap will fit from a 6-inch wrist size up to a 7.5-inch wrist size, therefore suitable for the majority of collectors. I'll show you the underside. Textured finish to the underside rather than being smooth. Now, positive of the textured finish, the moulding, is this allows for water or perspiration or sweat to wick away from the wrist, so the strap will dry out quickly in warmer weather if your wrist sweats and perspires. Alternatively, if you use the watch in water for diving, for example, or swimming, it allows the water to wick away through the holes and it will dry out quicker. The negative is it's not as smooth and comfortable if the strap were perfectly smooth on the underside as per the top side. Again, this is subjective. I can see the benefit of using a textured moulded strap with this profiling, but I think it would be better in terms of comfort level if it were perfectly smooth, but this is subjective. It comes down to your personal taste. On a positive note, I'm pleased to see the correct choice of quick release stainless steel spring bars versus standard stainless steel spring bars. Therefore, that negates the need for a spring bar tool if you want to exchange the strap. So let's test the chronograph complication and also the screw down crown execution. So, top pusher activates the chronograph complication. Nice positive click. It's a characteristic I really like about the Seiko Caliber VK63 Mecha Quartz. Nice firm resistance to the pushers, both the top pusher and the lower pusher. Top pusher stops and starts the chronograph, lower pusher resets it. And I like the firm resistance. It feels reliable and robust. Nice crisp action. And I like the contrasting light blue tip to the chronograph hand. It contrasts very well with the gradient sunburst style. So you've got to push it in hard. Nice loud audible click. Nice loud audible click when you start it again. Crisp action to it. Feels good. Sounds good. Feels good. Lower pusher resets. Resets bang on the 60 on the tachymeter. So I'm going to check it 3 out of 3 times. You'll know this from my previous reviews. When I review a chronograph, regardless of whether it's a manual wind, automatic or Mecha Quartz powered chronograph, I always check the chronograph complication 3 out of 3 times, resetting the chronograph hand at various positions on the dial and the tachymeter. The reason why I do it 3 out of 3 times is to prove it beyond question that the alignment is 100% correct. Often it's the case with chronograph pieces that are powered by mecha quartz movements such as the VK63 and the VK64, for example. The alignment isn't correct. The chronograph hand doesn't always reset bang on 60 on the tachymeter, bang on the 12 o'clock index on the dial, or the 60-minute mark on the chapter ring. Right, so I'm going to reset it again. Bang on the centre. I'll check it a third and final time in a different position to prove it 3 out of 3 times. So when they get the alignment correct, when they're setting the chronograph hand on the cannon pinion, it's a characteristic of the VK63 mecha quartz. The alignment is always correct. It's very accurate in terms of alignment, providing the chronograph hand has been set correctly on the cannon pinion rather than misaligned. So I'll stop it again and reset. Bang on the 60 on the tachymeter, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock index, bang on the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. Perfect, 3 out of 3 times. This is the benefit of Electra watches being made by Pécunet in Mortain, France. This watch is not made in China with a low level of quality control, and it's not mass produced. It's made in France by Pécunet, therefore it has a higher quality control level and also higher build quality level, and of course the production cost per piece is higher and therefore the profit margin per piece for Electra is lower, but the benefit from the collector's perspective is you're getting a higher quality control piece than if this were made in China. So chronograph complication works well. Let's test the screw down crown execution. So solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, mirror polished domed cap to it, and it is laser engraved with the emblem for Electra to a good standard. Large chamfer which deletes the tips of the coin edge teeth. It's correctly proportioned. It's not too large as per a dive watch crown. Doesn't project too far from the right hand flank, so when you flex the wrist it doesn't dig into the back of the hand. That's the benefit. Let's test the screw down crown execution. Silky smooth, sublime screw down crown execution, perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. Minimal number of turns required to unscrew it. So pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. This is the negative. Now the VK63 does have a date complication and the date wheel is still present beneath the dial. Electra haven't deleted it, so when you rotate the crown clockwise you can hear the loud audible clicks, and you can also feel the date complication clicking over because it does have a quick set date. Subjectively, one can be critical of this and say, well, there is space at 4 o'clock. They could have cited a date window here and used the date complication, because the argument is the VK63 has a date complication, so why not use it? Why hide it beneath the dial? This has 3 dials at 9, 6 and 3. Therefore, one could cite the date complication at 4 o'clock. We've all seen this on homages to the Daytona and also the Speedmaster, and such as the WD 1863 and also the PD 1644, which are Speedmaster and Daytona homages respectively. So it is possible to use the VK63 with 3 subdials and have a date complication at 4. It's subjective. It comes down to your personal taste. Do you dislike a phantom date setting position, as I do? Or alternatively, do you prefer to utilise the date complication, have a date window at 4? But I just want you to be mindful, this does have 2 clicks on the crown. It does have a phantom date setting position, something to be aware of. Put it out to the second click, hacks the movement. So the VK63 does have hacking, that's good. So one can set the time precisely to the second. We're now in the time setting position. Feels smooth, light resistance to the hands, doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough or gritty, feels nice and smooth, minimal resistance to the movements, has 0 joules. So I like the smoothness of it, very light resistance to it. And minimal backplay. When you rotate the coin edge crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, the arrowhead minute hand almost responds immediately. One doesn't have to take up a lot of slack. So it feels refined, feels good, quality control feels good. Pushing it back in restarts the movements, and screwing it back down reinstates the 101 metres of hermetic seal. 101 metres is a rather odd water resistance rating, but that's what Electra have chosen rather than the standard 100. So immediate thread pickup between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube, so that's good. Build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are excellent. Again, this is the benefit of quality control taking place in France versus this being made in China. This watch is made in France by Pécunet, and the quality control takes place by Pécunet in Mortain, France. Excellent. So it's good. Chronograph works good. Screw down crown works good. Bezel execution is good, albeit bi-directional. I prefer 120 click unidirectional. Let's look at the case back in detail. Solid 316L grade stainless steel caseback, screw down caseback versus a pressed on caseback, and it is a forged caseback, so it's hydraulically pressed. What I like about forged casebacks, and you'll know this from my previous reviews, they have a nice 3D effect. So matte bead blasted background to the background, but the embossing is mirror polished to a flawless standard. Now the benefit of this being a hydraulically pressed caseback, which is forged versus an engraved caseback, is it doesn't feel rough, it doesn't feel sharp. So one can have very deep embossing or debossing, and the benefit is, unlike deep engraving, you don't get the sharp edge as per a Steinhardt Ocean 139, which has Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, and a seahorse with very high definition engraving. Problem is it feels rough and sharp because they've engraved it rather than hydraulically pressing it. This is good. Mirror polishing is good to the Electra emblem and also Electra. And around the circumference is concentric CNC lathe tool machined. We've also got coin edge finishing. It says assembled in France, 101M water resistance and mecha quartz movements, which is good. And I really like it. It's nice and low profile because this is the benefit of using the VK63. They fully utilised it or maximised it because rather than this being a bubble back case back or a deep case back, 101 metres is strong for a Chronograph. Strictly speaking, it doesn't need it. It's not a dive piece. This could be 50 metres with a pressed on case back, but 101 metres is strong specification. Point is, it's very flat. So it's comfortable because it's forged versus being engraved, so it feels smooth. Comfort level and feel good factor are therefore enhanced. Milled slots are deburred and chamfered very well, so there's no sharp edges. The outer portion of the circumference is mirror polished to a flawless standard around the milled slots. Very good quality execution of the caseback. Undersides of the tonneau case is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to a good standard, beautiful lustre to it. And as I've detailed, 4 tips of the tonneau case lugs have bevels, that deletes the sharp corners. Undercuts to the flanks have large bevels, that deletes the sharp edges. Comfort level and feel good factor is maximised as a result. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. I'm just going to remove my Concord 40. So just bear with me and I'll continue. So, as I've detailed, the FKM floor rubber strap will fit from a 6-inch minimum up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size. Now, if I pull it tight, I can do it up on my 8-inch wrist and I can engage it just in both of the keepers. But really, for comfort, I need to undo it one hole or loosen it by one hole to there. So, as you can see, it's now a fraction too short because it just engages in the second keeper, but it's half an inch too short. So, 6-inch minimum to maximum 7.5 inch is the size for the strap. I'm not going to be critical of it because I appreciate for the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7.5 inch wrist size, this will suffice. You can just see the tip of it projecting through the second keeper. Too short for an 8-inch wrist, but good enough for a 7.5. Now, buckle and tang is correctly proportioned, good curvature to it, nice heavy gauge, aesthetically pleasing, does give the strap a tool watch aesthetic. Matte finish is correct, 20mm lug width on the tonneau case is also correct, and the taper is good, it's not too aggressive, plenty of meat on the strap, and the buckle and tang has plenty of meat, which balances the head of the piece. 2 things I like about this piece. Lack of heft is one, it's only 104 grams, which is excellent for 40mm. The other thing I like is lack of thickness, this is only 13.5. Now, they deserve credit here because often low-tier brands and low-tier micro brands make the mistake of using a box top hat double dome sapphire crystal to give the piece a vintage aesthetic. Yes, it does make it look like an acrylic, plexiglass or Hesselite domed crystal. So subjectively one could argue, well, using a box top hat double dome sapphire crystal does give the piece a vintage aesthetic. But the benefit of using a flat sapphire crystal like this is it reduces the thickness by 2mm. If this used a top hat crystal, it would be 2mm thicker, so therefore it would be well in excess of 14.5. This is only 13.5. It's still slightly thick. It's marginally above the sweet spot of 13, but it is okay. One has to appreciate it is 101 metres. And therefore it does need a thicker sapphire crystal and thicker case back to provide 101 metres of hermetic seal. If it were 50 metres, they could slim down the crystal and slim down the case back and reduce it by 0.5 mm to make it 13 or below. That would be beneficial, but then of course one could argue, well, 50 metres would be weak specification. 101 is strong, and I like it. Perfect clarity to the AR coating, Crystal looks invisible when you look at the piece straight on, and the gradient sunburst style does have an aesthetically pleasing violet blue graduating to electric blue colour tone when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle. I just think visually it would look more aesthetically pleasing if the 3 subdials were the same blue, which would complement the sunburst style rather than this guilloche finished silver subdial at 6 o'clock. But this is subjective. Some collectors might argue it balances the triangle with 12 Arabic numerals for the 12 o'clock index, and the silver does complement the indices, and also the silver subdial with the guilloche finishing does give it a high quality feel. I just prefer subdials to have the same colour on the 3 subdials. It's subjective. But in terms of wrist presence, it's good. 40mm, feels balanced, doesn't feel top heavy like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. Tonneau case curves around the wrist very well, so this will be suitable for a 6 to 7 inch wrist and a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. Doesn't look like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. The flanks are slab sided, although they're not too thick. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. So beautiful lustre. They've made the correct decision by this large mirror polished bevel, which marks the transition between the top of the tonneau case and the flanks, because this visually does make it look thinner than it is. It does have the vintage aesthetic of a 1960s or 1970s Electra chronograph. So yes, one has to appreciate, purist collectors will appreciate that because they'll like the look of the original 1966 to 1971 chronographs they were producing in France. I like it. I think it has a visual look, the aesthetic of a vintage piece. The flat sapphire crystal does reduce thickness, but of course it's harder and more scratch resistant than acrylic, as per the originals used in the 1960s and 1970s, so that's good. And again, ceramic bezel insert is harder and more scratch resistant, albeit I think an aluminium bezel insert with silver Arabic numerals on it would look better, and I think they could have further enhanced this piece with that with 120 click unidirectional bezel as I've detailed, but visually it looks good. Feel good factor is good, comfort level is good because it's 13.5. Lug to lug is very good, 47, so it's 1mm below the sweet spot of 48. You'll know this from my previous reviews. 48mm is the perfect sweet spot regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively, because 48 will fit all wrist sizes to perfection. A 47 is just 1mm below the sweet spot, which is good enough. 13.5 is just 0.5 above the sweet spot of 13, so it will still easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, therefore a practical daily wear piece. So it's good. 104 grams, feels comfortable and feels balanced on this 20mm FKM floor rubber strap. Plenty of meat to the strap, so it's good, and the buckle and tang adds some heft to the strap. It does feel very well balanced and proportioned. Good looking piece, comfortable piece, and low profile at 13.5 for a chronograph, so it's good. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So this uses BGW9 on the fully Lume ceramic bezel inserts. Just bear with me, I'm going to put back on my Concord 40 and continue. BGW9 on the ceramic bezel insert, BGW9 on the applied indices, and BGW9 on the handset. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. We're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the ceramic bezel inserts, 5 to 6 layers on the applied indices, 5 to 6 layers on the handset. Lume pip triangle is also fully lumed rather than just the Lume pip itself, so that's good. Good even application. So in daylight, what I like about it is, as I've detailed, the white tone on the ceramic bezel insert matches the white on the dial, matches the white on the hands. They've got it correct. It doesn't look more cream or white in 3 places. It's white in all 3 places. In the dark, it's also the same blue tone. So we're clearly looking at an even 5 to 6 layers on the bezel insert, the dial and the handset. What I like about it is they haven't used the production cost-cutting measure of, for example, 3 to 4 layers on the dial and 2 to 3 layers on the bezel insert. This is 5 to 6 on all 3 places. It's good. Potency of the exciter is good. Legibility is good. Symmetry of the dial is good. Now, often with chronograph pieces with VK63 mecha quartz movements with subdials at 9, 6 and 3, due to the position of the subdials at 9, 6 and 3, often the brand has to delete the indices at 9, 6 and 3 to give adequate clearance, adequate room for the subdials. This is good because we do still have the symmetry of the applied indices. They have managed to fit in an index next to the 9 o'clock subdial, next to the 6 o'clock subdial, and next to the 3 o'clock subdial respectively. So it's good. We have that symmetry of the indices. The inlay of the BGW9 on the ceramic bezel insert is good. They've engraved it deep enough to take a full 5 to 6 layers, so that's good. However, it's just a shame they've missed the opportunity of using Arabic numerals. For example, can you imagine if this had 15-minute ticks for the first quarter and Arabic numerals at 15, 30 and 45, or alternatively 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 respectively as per dive bezel? The originals were aluminium as I've detailed, but they had Arabic numerals, that's the point. And this would look better if they made a heritage reissue true to the original. Purist Electra collectors would appreciate that, but of course in terms of functionality it'd be beneficial, because this bezel really doesn't serve any meaningful purpose for timing. Because yes, one could say, well, the hour markers could serve as minute markers. You could say 5, 10, 15, 20 and so on. But if this had 15-minute ticks, it would be more useful as a dive bezel or simply for timing. And of course, if it had Arabic numerals at 15, 30 and 45, it would be more useful as per a dive bezel. Really, using a bidirectional bezel which is friction based, it does have a vintage aesthetic to it and does feel like the original 1960s, 1970s. But in terms of functionality, having these loomed hour markers, the only purpose is aesthetics. It's like it doesn't actually do anything, because it's better if it had Arabic numerals. A dive bezel should have Arabic numerals. That's the point I'm making. Putting these hour markers and looming them, okay, it's nice they glow in the dark, but it doesn't really mean that you can use it for anything. So it's a shame. I think they've missed an opportunity. But there we are. Performance is good. Potency of the exciter is good. Longevity is good. Colour tone match is good. Right, so let's discuss the movement use, because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So you'll all be familiar with the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz, which is made in Japan. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Mecha Quartz movement. Has 0 joules, has hacking, which works well. Quickset date complication works well. However, negative is we can't see it. There is no date window at 4 o'clock, as I've detailed. The negative is we have a phantom date setting position. I dislike that, but I think they've made a mistake. They could have used the date window. Yes, it does look nice with the symmetry of the 9, 6 and 3 subdials and the absence of the date complication, because the dial is symmetrical versus being asymmetrical. However, phantom date setting position is a negative. 3-year battery life is good. That's something I like. Now, 3-year battery life, to clarify, it's based upon you using the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day. However, in reality, you're not going to be using the chronograph complication for anything like 60 minutes per day. So therefore, although the stated battery life is 3 years for the VK63, in reality, it's nothing unusual for the battery life to last for 4 to even 5 years if you don't use the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day. So 3-year minimum, but in reality 4 to 5 is the reality of it. Stated accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per month, which is incredible. Just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month is better than plus or minus 1 second per day. Stellar accuracy. So 3-year battery life, which in reality is 4 or 5 years. Better than plus or minus 1 second per day accuracy is incredible. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Are there any negatives to it? None whatsoever. Subjectively, the only criticism or the only negative is the phantom date setting position and the lack of the date complication. But in terms of reliability, it is proven beyond question. It is an incredibly accurate movement, and it is also incredibly reliable. The other thing I like about it is the accuracy of the resetting to the chronograph hand. I've tested it 3 out of 3 times, and it resets bang on the 60 on the tachymeter, bang on the 60 minute tick, bang on the centre of the 12 o'clock triangle index on the dial. The alignment is correct. And this is again the benefit of this piece being made in France by Pequenet in Morteau versus it being made in China. Higher quality control level. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, low tier piece, low tier is €0 to €500 price point. This is €299. I'm going to declare it good quality, and I'm going to declare the value as okay. So why do I say good quality and okay value? Why don't I say excellent quality and excellent value? There are 2 things which add value to this piece. First one is 3 years of international warranty versus 12 months of international warranty. Often low-tier pieces only have 12 months. 3 years is excellent. The other thing that adds value is brand heritage, because Electra does have brand heritage from 1966 to 1971 in France, and then the brand died out and then it came back to life in 2024. But one has to respect the brand heritage adds value to the piece. The other thing that adds value to it is it's made in France by Pequenet in Morteau. This is not assembled in China, it is assembled in France, in Morteau. Quality control takes place in France, and it is higher quality control level than in China. So all of those things add value. 3-year warranty, brand heritage, made in France by Pécunet. However, one still has to look at the specification and say it is still powered by the Seiko caliber VK63 mecha cores. It's not a mechanical movement. For example, if this were powered by a Sellita caliber SW510M, the manual wind version of the SW510, yes, that would upgrade this to excellent quality and excellent value, but of course it would have to increase price point because that's not viable at €299. It would need to be 500 plus. However, that's something I'd like to see Electra do. I'd like to see them introduce mechanical movements such as the SW510M, and of course that does mean increasing the price point, but if this had a Swiss caliber made by Sellita and it were assembled in France by Pécunet, yes, it would be fantastic at €500 price point or even below the €1,000. The other thing they could do to increase the value proposition is include a bracelet option with a ratcheting micro adjustment clasp with 10mm on the fly adjustment. If, for example, this had an oyster style bracelet and a micro adjustment clasp, yes, at €300, one would say it's excellent quality and excellent value. The FKM floor rubber strap is good quality, but at €299 it doesn't impress me. It's nothing special to have a chronograph piece with BGW9, sapphire crystal with AR and a VK63 and 101 meters with an FKM floor rubber strap. The value is okay, but it doesn't say to me good value, it doesn't say to me excellent value, even though it's made in France, not China. So I think Electra need to do some refinement with this piece, offer it with a bracelet and a micro adjustment clasp. The other thing is I'd like to see a V2 version, and I'd like to see the bezel updated to 120 clicks, unidirectional bezel, and also 15-minute ticks and Arabic numerals added, 15, 30 and 45 for example, to make it more functional. But other than that, build quality, quality control, materials and finishing are good. Specification is good for €299. Good quality, value is okay. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Electra Bluebird. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.